All right, welcome back to session 3-2. We'll talk about in this session about getting unstuck. Being stuck keeps us locked into old stories and high anxiety in our lives. So we're going to look at that both in the past and the future in these next couple of sessions. First of all, the goal in this whole process is getting your perspective. Is it? My question is it in the present? Is it in the here and now? Now, if we're living in the past, we will continue to remain stuck. Remember what I said about the brain and that lower part of the brain, the monkey part of the brain. It doesn't know the difference between today and yesterday. It doesn't know the difference if you're really living through the trauma or the rejection or the abandonment or the betrayal that you had earlier or now. It doesn't know. So it's going to respond to that kind of thinking as if it's right now. Now, one of the things that Oprah says that I'm really going to bring into this session and the next session is this. We must learn to be observant. What's going on inside of us? What's the story in my head? What am I reacting to? And we must focus our attention on our experiences with clarity. Doing that, we then open our mind up for options that are available to us. Now, and we must learn the skill of stillness. You started that in the last sessions. You began to just sit before God and wait. So here we're going to take this another step further. Now, when we stay in the present about when we're not staying in the past, then we're trying to recreate a different present. In other words, if I'm obsessing over something that happened in the past, or I'm replaying tapes, or I'm running through videos in my head of what may or may not happen, what I'm trying to do is how could I have turned right instead of left? How could I have done this instead of that? If I'd only known this instead of that, then what I'm trying to do is that my present circumstances suck and I don't want it. And so I focus on the past and where could I be different so I could be somewhere different today. And it never works. We continue to loop. Our brain continues to obsess. And our brain still thinks we're back there in the middle of all that. Now, there's that difference between what we want to be true, that implicit, and what we discovered to be true. Now, that causes a lot of conflict. It's like, but I want this to be true. Well, it's not. You're now discovering what really was. And there's a real struggle there as we deal with that two different things. Now, what happens that keeps this brain so looping through compulsively is the losses that we've not yet grieved. We've not walked through these things. We've not allowed ourselves to feel the enormous sadness and loss of things that we need to make an inventory of and to grieve, truly grieve. Sometimes there is unresolved resentment. Well, I probably should say most times there's unresolved resentment and bitterness that we just choose not to let go, because if I let it go, it means that hurt, that pain, that betrayal, that whatever happened is not all that important. Oh, yes, it's important. But we can't continue to carry that resentment and bitterness through life. It destroys ourselves. It creates stories about ourselves that keep us crippled. It keeps us captive. And then some of us may be struggling with forgiveness. We're struggling to forgive somebody. I've heard clients say, well, if I forgive them, it means it's okay. If I forgive them, it lets them off the hook. If I forgive, no, that's not what I'm referring to here. My encouragement through this process is to set yourself free, to let yourself go in this whole deal of forgiving. I'm not telling you to go back to anybody out there and address an abuser or someone who's mistreated you in any way and give forgiveness. Not now. You don't go any of that way until you've worked it out with your therapist. This is something you do in your own heart. This all is a process of us letting go. And letting go means not forgetting. It doesn't mean denial. It doesn't mean to minimize the pain and hurt and the consequences. It means to move beyond. To finally say, I am no longer there. I am here today. And I've got to let it go. Now, because remember, the fear, if the brain thinks it's still back there, that limbic system, the monkey brain is still saying, man, I'm still in the middle of all that because we're rehearsing it over and over in our heads, then guess what happens? Fear comes into our lives, jacks us up, and then we either hit a 10 or we're close to it. And we run around with that heightened sense of anxiety all the time. It doesn't take long for us to really blow our stack. And guess who's running our ship now? That lower limbic system, the one that's not very smart, that doesn't know the difference in consequences or time and space or any of that. It begins to react to other people around us based on those stories. And now we're in a reactive mode all day in and day out. Now, I want you to be aware of your losses. I want you to think about the friends that you've lost. You find that you no longer fit in some groups, social events, maybe church or whatever else. It's like you're no longer in those circles because of your loss or what has happened in your life. Is there a sense of loss of community and there's no safety net in your world? Have you lost your sense of community, your connection? What about religious fellowship, a place where you could go to lean on somebody in your faith? Have you lost a sense of community because you've had to move or because something has happened and you can no longer go there and worship? Have you lost that? What about a job? Has there been consequences that have lost a job or have had to move and it's really hit your pocketbook as well as your career and something you were passionate about? I want us to think about, did you lose a perspective of who you thought your spouse was? Did suddenly you wake up somewhere along the way and realize that who you thought you were married to is not who you're married to? That's really weird when you begin to look at your spouse and your life and your marriage, and you suddenly realize it was nothing what you thought it was. So now you're grieving something that never existed. That's a real weird feeling. That's really strange. Why am I grieving something that never was? Well, because remember the difference between explicit and implicit brain? What you thought you lived in, you suddenly realize that piece of your brain is saying it's dead. That partner, that spouse, that significant other in your life is no longer they died, essentially. And you're trying to reconcile that in your mind. It's crazy. Maybe you look at yourself in the mirror and you say, I'm not even the person I thought I was. Who was I? Who am I? Some of us may have thrown ourselves under the bus to keep a marriage. Now, we gave up the very thing that we had as a treasure to keep something we had no power to keep. And then we end up somewhere down the road not having the marriage and not having your me. That's a grievous thing. You're going to have to process through that grief. Maybe they're finances, relationships, locations, time, choices. How many times have you made decisions and you didn't have the information to make an appropriate decision? Maybe your choices were stolen from you too. You've lost chances to make choices. Now, what I want you to do, and I'm going to explain this because it's really, really important that we work through this and you spend time on this thing. So don't rush. There's no hurry. You got plenty of time to work through this. I want you to make a list of your losses in your journal. List the losses in categories. You can section them off however you want, what works for you. And part of that is what parts or part of yourself did you lose? What part did you think was a real part of your life that now you realize, I don't have anymore. It's gone. List them out. What parts of your life opportunities did you lose? Opportunities for this or that, or to be here, do that you weren't given the opportunity to even choose. Have you lost friends? Some of them you thought were dear friends, and not because of them maybe, but because of the awkwardness of the situation or because of the need to move, or you lost friendships. Maybe they're financial losses, career losses, time losses, I want you to go through and make the list as complete as you can. And then once you've done this and you completed it, I want nothing more than you do is just to sit with that list in your hands and just hold it. Or hold it close to you. And I want you just to feel. Notice your body. Notice your feelings. Notice what you feel and where you feel it. Some of us carry our resentment, our anger, our sadness in different areas of our body. Beware, I carry a lot of sadness sometimes in my stomach. It's caused me problems over the years because I carry a lot of emotion here I've needed to process and didn't. Do you carry it there? How old is it? Can you name it? Listen to it. Does it have a story about you? See there, you're not enough. See there, you don't matter. See there, you're not wanted. What's the message? And I want you to write these down. Our body remembers. Our bodies carry the story with it. And by you being attentive, by you being aware, you're scanning yourself, you're realizing I'm carrying pain. I'm carrying messages. Your awareness will help you set you free. I encourage you to do this. Take as long as you need to. You got plenty of time. You can always start the next session when we get through. All right? Go to it.